Okay, so this is going to be a review of a comic I got recently from a convention I went to, which was pretty fun. Tampa Bay Comic-Con is always a fun time. Probably I enjoy that more than MegaCon, but anyway. Anywho's, let's talk about one of the comics I got, and I'll be doing consistent reviews of probably all the comics I got over that time for the next few reviews. But anyway, let's talk about the first one I read through called Spider-Man, Punisher, Sabertooth, Designer Jeans, where Frank, Peter, and Victor all argue about which has the better jeans. Valentino... I don't know. The joke's lost. I don't know a lot of of fashion names. So yeah. So let's talk about this comic. Basically, what it is, it was one big one-shot from the 90s where Spider-Man and Punisher and Sabertooth form an uneasy alliance to dig into Roxxon Oil, the Roxxon Corporation, excuse me, to basically find out the series of strange murders and mutilations on both animals and humans, and it leads them into this dark conspiracy. And you may be thinking, oh, that's really cool. Spider-Man and Punisher teaming up with Wolverine's archenemy? That's gotta be awesome, right? That has to be a really cool thing. Oh, if only it were so. Look, in concept, that's a really cool idea, because the whole thing this comic is supposed to be going for is that Spider-Man is a hero, Punisher is, of course, an anti-hero, and Sabertooth is a villain. And they are three forms of that spectrum. And that's a cool angle, but they don't go anywhere with it. In fact, Sabertooth is kind of dropped till the end of the book. They just kind of forget about him, and this is more Spider-Man and Punisher's book. Sabertooth just feels like an afterthought half the time. And if anything, Sabertooth has more reason to be here than Spider-Man does. Punisher has a reason for being here, so if anything, it should have been just Punisher and Sabertooth. But, yeah. So, if you're wondering what the story is, what's going on is that, like I said, Spider-Man, Punisher, and Sabertooth are all digging into a conspiracy of Roxxon Oil, Roxxon Corporation. I know they kind of, in comics, they kind of go from oil to corporation. Same friggin' difference. Not really. I take that back. But what it is that they've discovered this conspiracy. And you may be asking, why are all these characters looking for them? You know, digging into Roxxon and this whole conspiracy. Well, they all have interesting reasons, except Spider-Man, but I'll get to him in a minute. I'll talk about the two that have the most reason to be here. Punisher is here because several homeless people he had become friends with had been disappearing and they've been murdered. They've been found mutilated and body parts stolen. Sabertooth is digging into Roxxon mostly because he's discovered that one of the scientists who experimented on him during his days on Weapon X is there, and he's gone looking to, what else, do what Sabertooth does best, to eviscerate him. The only one who's really who feels kind of out of place through most of this comic is Spider-Man, who just kind of stumbled on this while at a late-night college, he was doing some late-night college work, and then the lab blew up, and then he discovered all these mutilated animal parts. And you may be thinking, oh, that's, Spider-Man would totally dig into animal stuff, to which I would go, yes, if this was the Brzezinski run. But considering it's not, if anything, I feel like the more logical explanation would be he would go to someone like, I don't know, unfortunately Marvel doesn't really have an animal-centric character that's not a villain. So, if anything, if this was DC, he'd have gone right to Vixen or Gowanna Beast and gone, hey, animals are getting killed, you might want to get the red on this. But since this is not DC, he would have probably gone to, I guess the closest would be Tigra? But Tigra, Punisher, Sabertooth probably wouldn't rank in the dollars, so yeah, Spider-Man it is. And also, Spider-Man is so out of character in this comic. I mean, yeah, he's cracking jokes and whatnot, but he is so Batman at one point. Like, when he's interrogating a guard that was out that night during the explosion, he grabs him, holds him over, and starts dumping the money into the Hudson River, and he's like, guess what? You're going to be following that money if you don't start talking. And I'm like, that is not Peter. Peter would not interrogate someone like that. And everyone would know Spider-Man's M.O. would not be to kill anyone. People would be like, are you friggin' serious? I mean, with Batman, you can make the argument that, oh, people would know by now that Batman is, Batman's not going to kill anyone. He's gonna hurt him, though. He's gonna hurt him in ways unimaginable. But the thing is, that's the thing what sets apart Peter from Bruce, is that Bruce would beat a fool up. He would beat a fool up, whereas Peter would just be like, I got nothing. So it just felt really out of place. And also, there's a mutual, in most comics, there's a mutual respect between Frank and Peter. While Peter does not honor, what Punisher does, and he does want to put him in jail, he does have a lot of sympathy for Frank. And Frank, usually, when Spider-Man and Punisher team up, Punisher usually goes the route of, alright, so I'm working with a superhero, I'm going to use my rubber bullets. I'm going to use rubber bullets, some stun weapons. I'm not going to kill, because he does actually have a lot of respect for Peter. And he does have a lot of respect for the superhero community. Even though he doesn't like working with them, he does appreciate the backup, and he does appreciate that there needs to be people out there who can do things in the light where he has, he can't be among them. So that's what I've always liked about Spider-Man and Frank, usually, is because they have like this, it's kind of a begrudging respect between the two. But in here, Punisher's just like, no, he needs to die. And Spider-Man's like, no, you're just as bad as him. I'm going to lock you up and totally forget about our whole mission and just whine about it. And like I said, Sabertooth is also in here, who they all run into, and it almost becomes like a separate story when they run into Sabertooth, and then they get back on track. Although, it's really hard to get on track with this comic when it doesn't know how to do a panel. Seriously, I spent like a good 3 minutes multiple times on several pages trying to figure out where in this comic I was supposed to read. Seriously, the panels are a total mess, and these giant word bubbles are not helping. Like I said, I had to backtrack and just totally map out where some of these pages were going. It was a total mess. The artwork's fine, some of the facial expressions are kind of meh. But yeah, going back to when they run into Sabertooth, which feels like a totally different story, because that lasts several pages in this one shot, where Peter and Frank are trying to deal with Sabertooth, and Sabertooth is hunting, like I said, hunting for a scientist who was working for Roxxon, who did stuff to him in Weapon X. And there's a moment where Spider-Man goes, "Great, you idiot!" When Punisher starts shooting at him, Spider-Man goes, "Great, you idiot, now we can't reason with him." I'm like, Peter, you fought Victor before. You know how Sabertooth works. He's a total psychopath. He wasn't going to listen to reason in the first place. There was no point where you could have got where... And also, he can heal. You even tell Frank, Sabertooth can heal from all those wounds. It's kind of obvious. You know he can do this. I mean, yeah, guns are bad and all that for if you're a superhero and all that, but still, come on, it's Sabertooth. He can, Punisher can hit him with anything, and at this point in the 90s, Wolverine's healing factor, even though it kind of varies, especially in the 90s, Sabertooth was always consistently faster at this point and from then on. So you could hit him with anything and that dude get right back up. And that's the case here. So... the comic, like I said, Sabertooth also even though Sabertooth is mentioned in the billing, and he shows up early in the first and he's part of the second act of this comic, he is totally gone until the last few pages. Like, they just forgot about him, and this is just mostly Spider-Man and Punisher's story, with a little bit of Sabertooth in it. The whole story involving, genetic alteration, it's been done before, and, it would have made a little more sense if Mr. Sinister or the High Evolutionary was behind this. But still, it's just, a lot of the writing's bad, the pacing's really off. It's not a great comic, guys. It's not. I mean, if you want to see, if you just want to see the novelty of Spider-Man and Punisher and Sabertooth all kind of, quote-unquote, working together, which they're totally not, it's kind of lost here. There's a lot of potential in this comic, and it doesn't go that route. Like I said earlier, on the back of this comic, it says Spider-Man, self-sacrificing hero; Punisher, death-dealing anti-hero; Sabertooth, deadly villain. And it's supposed to say, "Oh, now we look at the three sides of this spectrum." They never do that. They never do. They squandered a really cool idea and did nothing with it. So, not a great comic. I'm actually glad I only got this for $3. Because I feel like if I had bought this at full price, like it was supposed to be like $9-10, I feel like I'd have been cheated. But $3, it's totally fine. If you really want to read this, if you're a diehard like Punisher, Spider-Man, or even Sabertooth fan, maybe give this a look. Keyword maybe. But for casual goers, I say skip. But once again, hope you all enjoyed this review, and if you've read Spider-Man, Punisher, Sabertooth, Designer Jeans, man, that's a mouthful, just comment below, let me know, and once again, hope you all enjoyed this, and I'm out.